How's it going, everybody? It is Monday. It's the Poor Sports Podcast, and we have a lot to talk about today. Solo Monday recap episode, and just Seattle sports abound. I had an interesting. I watched football in maybe not even an interesting way. Maybe that's a lie. I watched football this weekend. It was my wife's birthday on Friday. And so we did stuff Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And a friend of mine asked me, he's like, what is your wife? A white woman, a 20-year-old white woman? And she's not 20, but she fits. She's a 20-year-old white woman in only the bad ways. So we did Friday was her actual birthday. We did like family stuff. And then during the Washington, Michigan game, I was in Seattle drinking and consuming the game via like a bar TV or my phone or whatever. And, I watched part of the game on YouTube TV. It is pretty amazing, the technology we have, that you can be like, I can be anywhere around and be able to like watch the actual game, not just the game cast or whatever. And I watched part of it at the Stoop Brewing, on the Stoop Brewing TV. Part of it on my phone at Holy Mountain Brewing, and part of it on my phone at this place called Umisaki. I don't know. I'd actually be interested in some sushi recommendations from folks that live in Seattle. I ate at a pizza place that I recommended a long time ago called Dantini, that I stand by as one of the great Seattle pizza places. I just noticed something about this camera that I'm going to fix. I think Dantini pizza is, like, my opinion, maybe the best pizza I've had in my life, period. And I know that Seattle, as a controversial thing, got ranked the number one pizza place in the country, which is hilarious and wrong. It's incorrect. I think Dantini stands up to just about any pizza in the country. So anyways, and then Sunday, we continued the birthday marathon at Seven Seas Brewing, and I watched the game on... They have a projector screen in a bright lit thing where it's like so washed out you can barely see the players, but I technically watched both games, much of both games, but not all of both games. And listen, I don't think we're doing man cards anymore, right? I don't think that's like a pretty lame thing that went away in maybe the late 90s, early 2000s. But if that was still a currency that mattered, I understand I would certainly lose some of them. I'm okay with it. I got to, this morning I watched some chunks of both games, and listen, if being semi-ignorant stopped people from having opinions in this country, we'd have a very quiet country. Anyways, so the Seahawks lose to the Seahawks. I just immediately, that's how ignorant I am, is I'm like, I don't even know the actual outcome of the game. The Seahawks played against the Giants, and they lose. They lose in somewhat heartbreaking fashion. They lose on a field goal block. I mean, officially there's like another drive after that, but they lose because of a field goal block. Controversial non-call, non-penalty on the jumping over the offensive line, which it seems like whatever Gene Steratore was fine with and Mike McDonald was fine with, and everybody else in the world did not understand how that rule differed from the times when teams get penalized for jumping over the offensive lineman, for jumping over the long snapper. But I'm certainly no NFL rules expert, but like, what is the point? I almost think, like, what is the point of a rule that we can't describe to people in a way that's meaningful? I kind of feel this way about this is why some of the quarterback, the roughing the passer stuff, that you're like, well, if the person has their body weight lands on the quarterback, then that's not okay, even though like body weight's fine on every other player on the field. And then even these hip drop tackles, it's like this kind of subtle technique of tackling in a way that's causes injuries. And of course, they probably cause injuries, but shouldn't this stuff be like explainable to people who aren't NFL rules experts or or like technique coaches. But either way, I mean, that's like I was going through some simulation stuff with some friends of mine about the decision to kick the field goal because, I mean, I'm certainly on the team that's more in favor of. I'm certainly on the team that's more in favor of going for it more often. I'm a guy I'm a slave to the analytics, absolutely. And we were going over it, and I think so. If they kick that field goal and make it, they had like a 37% win prop. They would have had a 37% win probability approximately, with the idea that I think there would have been about 50 seconds left on the clock. The Giants have 3 timeouts, and only need a field goal to win. It's like, I want to say the Giants would have had something between, or something in the range of like a 30 or 40% chance of scoring. And then obviously when you go to overtime, it's not 100% chance of victory. In overtime, you're probably like the home team maybe has a small percentage advantage, but it wasn't that crazy, the idea that the Seahawks should go for it there. What I would say is I think the Seahawks have the most innovative and data aware coaching staff maybe in all of football, which is great, by the way. That's thrilling. I'm happy that's the case. I love that about the Seahawks' present situation. Where what I found was that if you so I was using Ben Baldwin's fourth down calculator because he has a great automated Twitter account that gives you like in kind of real time, like this is a scenario that occurred, this was the right decision, and this is the decision that actually got made and the result. It didn't catch that Seahawks fourth down, maybe because whatever it assumed that it was a fourth down that was didn't need to be caught. I don't know what the logic behind it is. I think some of it is just like it's limited by the anti-automation stuff that old Elon has emphasized on or anti-bot accounts that old Elon has emphasized on Twitter. But I went to the thing, I manually put in all the information, and the Seahawks kicking it versus not kicking it was like a 6.8% gain to kick it in win probability. But that was because it was 4th and 4. In the same setting, and not even removing the yardage that they would have gained at 4th and 1. But in the same setting at 4th and 1, it's actually a slight advantage to go for it because you don't like, again, because you're kicking the ball to tie, you're not taking the lead. So your win probability only goes up to, your max is like 37% if you kick and make the field goal. And anyways, what I don't think is, and I'd be curious to find this out, at 4th and 1, the right decision by analytics is to go for it in that situation. Even though you're in field goal range, even though it's a game-tying field goal, the right decision is to go for it. However, I think there's part of human nature and part of being an NFL coach. I think those coaches are going to I don't even think the Seahawks coaches, who are maybe the ballsiest head coaches, or the Seahawks coaches, maybe the ballsiest coaches in football. Ryan Grubb made the incredibly ballsy reverse call in the Apple Cup. He actually made a really, I thought a very ballsy in the Seahawks territory 4th down decision earlier in the game that did not go in the Seahawks' favor, by the way. But a situation where I think he definitely saw a moment to narrow the gap and win probability. And maybe that's not the terminology he's using, but that's like the function of what would have happened had the Seahawks gone for it and hit on that 4th down, and they did not. I would have been curious to see if the Seahawks were at 4th and 1. So there's the pass that ends the game to Jackson Smith-Njigba that he doesn't catch. I think he was past first down yardage is my memory. But let's say that pass brings him to 4th and 1. I'm interested to see how into these analytics the Seahawks coaches are, because you're talking like it went from like a 6.8% win probability swing in favor of kicking it to like a 1.5%. So you're starting to get into the thing where it's like you're splitting hairs. It's a coin flip. Maybe it comes down to, do you trust Jason Myers and the special teams play that's been a little shaky at points? Or do you trust the Geno Smith and the running backs on this team? I think the Seahawks still had one timeout at the time. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I would have been interested to see. My guess is they still kick it because it's the defensible decision, and that's what I think. That's what I think the coaches that are like into analytics, I think that's what they're fighting against, is the defensible decision, the decision that when the time comes that articles get written or press conferences happen, or they're looking at their long-term employment, did they make the defensible decision, the decision that like you could argue for most convincingly using conventional wisdom? And I certainly think that the way the Seahawks handle fourth down is pretty innovative at this point. I don't know if I think they're ballsy enough to go for it on 4th and 1 with, I think it would have been, if it was like 50, I think it was 55 seconds left, if it had been 4th and 1 in field goal range. I don't know if they have the balls to do it. Although we're seeing a lot more, like, teams are handling the going for two quite a bit more intuitively or intellectually, and I do appreciate that. I think that's a step forward. That's a big step forward for football analytics. So okay, let's talk about, they're getting run all over. We saw last week against Detroit, especially in the first half, they absolutely ran all over them. Tyrone Tracy is a guy that I actually liked coming out of college. He's a rookie this year. So for a lot of people, he came out of nowhere. He's a guy that I've been trying to scam off a guy and on my dynasty fantasy league, because I think he's a guy that's underrated, a guy that I had like some high hopes for, a high opinion of. And so he's no schlub in my mind. I understand probably most people didn't know who he was. I also think it's almost irrelevant who the running back is if they have the minimum athleticism to be a running back. When people say running backs don't matter, I don't know if you've heard that. That's what they mean. It's not like the running game doesn't matter, but the argument is that like the personnel that's playing running back isn't so important to the effectiveness of the running game. And so yeah, while I think that Tyrone Tracy is no schlub, he's like he ran for 130 yards. All offseason, we were hearing about this run wall. The Seahawks need to build a run wall to stop the run. That's the most important thing, is to build a run wall. We haven't seen it. Although I will say I was looking at some advanced stats this morning, and I got to do a little more research on this. And I'm always, when people say they'll be like, they'll say a thing that's universally beloved actually sucks. I'm always skeptical of that when people say that. It's like here's an example. I'm not a big fan of the Beatles. The Beatles do nothing for me. I don't hate the Beatles, but they're like, I'm not excited to hear a Beatles song. Of the bands that I would listen to, you'd have to get so far down the list. I would never choose the Beatles as the band that I was listening to. If there was like, a song got referenced, I might listen to that song. But I'm never going to listen to like a cover-to-cover Beatles album. But I'm not going to tell you that the Beatles suck, because the Beatles very obviously don't suck. And you can tell because so many people love the Beatles. And the Seahawks have gotten torched the last 2 weeks. Ostensibly, they've gotten torched, but I did see some advanced stats, like estimated points added about the running game, that they're actually ranked towards the top of run defenses in the NFL. I'm not going to quote that right now. I'm not standing by that. I'm not I'm not assigning my name to that opinion yet, but I am going to do a little more research on it because I'm curious. From the outside looking in, from a layman's perspective, it seems like they're getting their asses kicked in the run game. And, they're somewhat effective in the pass game. Daniel Jones looked pretty overwhelmed early in the game, and obviously that started to dissipate. Then without Malik Neighbors, Daniel Jones had a pretty efficient and a pretty strong passing game. Darius Slayton, another guy that I think is like probably unknown to most people, but a talented receiver, goes for 122 yards. And it's this Seahawks team where I think you expected, with the hire of Mike Macdonald, for them to exceed expectations on defense and maybe lag behind a little bit offensively. The defense has been the least impressive part of this team so far, at least without diving into the numbers. I'm going to spend, after looking at it, also had the pass defense at like about league average, like a neutral effect on points compared to an average defense. And I'm going to do a little more research on that again before I start assigning my name to analytics that I'm not as sure about. But yeah, this is like, I think this is the kind of the fruition of all the concerns that people had after the first couple games, the first 3 games, where it was like there were huge caveats to why the Seahawks had a little bit easier road against the Dolphins, against the Patriots. You're talking like 2 backup quarterbacks, essentially. Jacoby Brissett is technically the starter in New England, but not the nobody's impressed with Jacoby Brissett, right? And Skylar Thompson, is that even right? It is Skylar Thompson, right? Yeah, that's like there's huge caveats, huge legitimate caveats to the, and then Bo Nix also, by the way, like Bo Nix, his first start of a rookie. Huge caveats, huge legitimate caveats anyways, so I don't know. How do you, I guess like I don't want to be like reacting and changing my opinion of the Seahawks all the time. I still think the Seahawks have a roster and a coaching staff and scheme that could beat any team in the NFL any day. And I don't think that's true of every team, right? Like, I don't think the Jacksonville Jaguars could go beat any team in the NFL any day. But I think that the Seahawks have potential to be the most potent offense and defense, both offense and defense in the NFL on any given day. And then when those two things click, I think they're unstoppable. I think they have the talent and the coaching staff to be unstoppable on a given day. But obviously problems. Jackson Smith and Jigba. How do you feel about Jackson Smith and Jigba at this point? Like I wasn't in love with the pick, but it's also like I'm a big draft and combine guy. And so coming off of an injury, there was no data for me to sink my teeth into, and then all the film was an extra year old. Obviously, Jackson Smith and Jigba does not have a huge rookie season. And what is he? Let's see what he's at right now. He's 29 receptions, 257 yards, volume receiver, not a huge deep threat, not a red zone threat. Like, is that guy a first round pick? Do you still feel good about that as a first round pick? I read a lot of scouting reports of people saying that they thought he was the best receiver in that draft. I didn't see it, but there's things to like. DK has the big fumble yesterday. I got to say, like, overall, I think you can't be happier with the development of DK Metcalf, even if it's just equal production, equal dominance. Really not. I don't think that he is like become an incredible route runner. And I don't think that's ever going to happen, by the way. And it's nothing against DK Metcalf as like a dude. I think a guy with his body type is going to be limited in the routes that he can run. But I also think he's going to be unlimited in how he can use his body to get open in single coverage. And so, like, I don't think we ever need DK Metcalf to be running complex routes that require sharp cuts. As long as there's receivers that can do that on the team. And what I will say is, like, DK's not out self-destructing every week. And that was I think DK Metcalf has maybe cost the Seahawks 1 to 2 games in his career with his self-destruction, his attitude and penalties and shit like that. And I mean, I think you'll see, like, we all kind of know, one game is huge in the NFL. And a game like this, the Seahawks losing to a team they absolutely should have beat, a team that was down its star rookie and down Devin Singletary, right? This would be better if I was better prepared, but yeah, I think that you're like, it is Devin Singletary, right? I'm not crazy. Yeah, Devin Singletary. So they're down their starting running back. Again, that's not something that I think is incredibly important, but it is like a guy that's one of the nominal starters for the Giants. And then Daniel Jones, who's like, feels like he's been on the verge of being replaced for the last 4 years. Losing that game could be a critical one. It's the same way, like, I think the Huskies have a potential to lose their next 6 games. And I think if you look at the Seahawks schedule and you see, like, San Francisco obviously on Thursday. I also think by the way, it seems incredibly unfair to me that the Seahawks have to play. It's going to come out to be like 3 games in 11 days. How do you have a team play a Monday, a Sunday, and then a Thursday? That shouldn't be allowed. I mean, I even think a Thursday, and I know they're doing the bye weeks after, like, international travel. I think a Thursday should either come after. I think a Thursday should come after a bye week, actually. That's what I think. I think you should come out of your bye week and play Thursday Night Football. I don't know that I think it's kind of unfair that. So, San Francisco at home is a potential loss. Atlanta in Atlanta, potential loss. Buffalo at home, potential loss. Rams at home, potential loss. San Francisco in San Francisco, potential loss. Till you get to, like, Arizona at home, is there a game that I'm like, the Seahawks could come out of the next 5 games 3-7 conceivably. They could be going into Thanksgiving weekend 3-7. No, that's not Thanksgiving weekend, right? It's the weekend after that. But they could be going into the Arizona game, the Week 12 matchup, 3-7, pretty conceivably. I don't think it's the majority outcome, but it's conceivable. And anyway, I don't know. My optimism is not, like, I think it's wavering less than my opinion on the Seahawks is I think they're probably going to be like an 11-win team. I think I might have said 12 wins because I didn't want to say what Mike Hansen said, one of our frequent commenters. I think there's a chance they're going to be an 11-win team. I think that's my, like, what I would say is the plurality outcome in my mind is an 11-win team. So I put a lot of money on it. Not a lot of money. I put enough money on them to make a lot of money. I think I put $100 on the Seahawks to win the Super Bowl at plus 8,400 and to win the NFC at like plus 3,700. And I still feel fine about that. I think that the Seahawks are kind of exactly what I expected. I think they're better than an average team. But when you start to get into that end of season record, a game like the Giants that you should have won is going to hurt. Also, by the way, I think that game looks even closer than it was because of the Rayshon Jenkins fumble recovery return, which I don't know. I mean, I'm not certain that's a fumble. I'm on the team that's like, if that got called a touchdown on the field, or if it didn't get called a fumble on the field, I don't think that gets turned into a fumble in replay. It wasn't so obviously, and that's as big a swing in terms of expected points as is like possible in all of football. if you're on the goal line essentially as the Giants, your expected points there are probably like 6.9 points. And to have that swing and become that play, to have that swing and become a Seahawks +7, that's almost a 14-point swing, almost the largest possible swing in points. I mean, there certainly is not, there might be game states where the swing is greater, where you'd expect the team to go for two, but that is as big of a swing and expected points as possible. And even as the beneficiaries of that, the Seahawks still end up losing by 2 scores in the end. Yeah, how does everyone feel about the blocked kick though? Like, again, it's the rule, but is this the spirit of the rule? I also don't understand why you see guys attempt that so often. It seems like such a risky, like not only physically risky, but like it gets penalized, maybe even incorrectly. If that one wasn't a penalty, then maybe the call's getting penalized incorrectly all the time too. I don't know. Okay. Let's talk about the Huskies because the Huskies won, which was nice. They were favored against Michigan, which I was actually surprised by. A number 10 team, a team like Michigan, who to me is a powerhouse. They're one of the real blue blood programs in the country. Like for them to come to Washington and be the underdog was surprising to me. And the whole game, while I was watching it via Gamecast and on YouTube TV on my phone, the whole time it just felt like a game that the Huskies were gonna let slip out of their hands. Truly up until like the final drives, it felt like that was a game that was gonna slip away from them. A game where you spot yourself 2 touchdowns and then it slips away slowly, and that's what it felt like the whole time. And they end up pulling it out with great performances by Denzel Boston, Will Rogers, Jonah Coleman. Will Rogers does throw his first interception. I got to say, Denzel Boston is his success and what he does on the field is a real indictment of the star rating system. It's hard to care about recruiting in the same way in 2024 with the transfer portal and all that stuff, all the stuff that comes along with college football these days. But Denzel Boston looks like an NFL player on the field. He's big, he's fast, he's, physical at the ball. Like this dude is, him and Giles Jackson combined, I feel like might be a better 1-2. I can't say that because Rome Odunze was so good. But I think both those guys, Denzel Boston in 2024 and Giles Jackson in 2024, to me, are better than Jalen Polk and Jalen McMillan. So if you omit the Rome Odunze, who I think is one of the best receivers, I think he's going to go down as one of the best NFL receivers ever. Nobody's higher on Rome Odunze than I am. I would have taken him number 1 out of those guys, the 3 big receivers. And I might have turned on Malik Neighbors a little bit, but I would have, at the time of the draft, I absolutely would have taken him over. I would have taken Odunze over Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors. So, I think maybe what Washington has left in this season, obviously they technically could challenge for a playoff spot. If they win out, I think they would challenge for a playoff spot. I think the chances of them winning out is pretty low. If they win 8 games, I think you've got to be thrilled. But this game was, to me, like this was a pivotal, like, if they don't win this game, your opinion of them might change to the point where they're struggling to be a bowl team and a bowl eligible team. I don't know what the status of a team like Washington would be accepting or not accepting a low end bowl if they go if they win 6 games. Anyway, I will say forcing Michigan to bench their quarterback, gratifying. Seeing Donovan Edwards run all over the Huskies again was disconcerting. But man, Denzel Boston looks so good. I'm like, whatever you come out of the season with, and I'm a Jed Fish skeptic, and that's what I've become. I'm a Jed Fish skeptic and a Steve Belichick truther. I think Steve Belichick might be the best hire any of these, and I'm a Ryan Grubb fan and I'm a Mike Macdonald fan, but Steve Belichick might be the best hire of all these guys. And yeah, I mean, outside of like Donovan Edwards, he breaks off the 39-yard touchdown, but he gets held like somewhat in check. The running game gets held somewhat in check outside of the one big play. Outside of the one big play, or outside of Donovan Edwards, there's another 23 carries, and the longest carry is for 7 yards. I wonder if Edwards probably had another carry over 7 yards. I haven't dug through the play-by-play, but and then obviously, I mean, the passing game. How much of that is Michigan's incompetence in the passing game? How much is Washington being dominant defensively? I don't know, but there were points in that game where it looked like Jack Tuttle was going to take the game back, and he ultimately does not. 7th-year senior does not take back or does not take over that game and deliver it for Michigan. So, I mean, you're certainly going to be more optimistic after a victory. I understand that. I don't know if there's anything in there that makes me like think that this Washington team is in any way elite. I think I'm steadfast at what I said last week, which is like if they win this game, they're probably an 8-ish win team, but still, you take the win, obviously. And to beat a 10th ranked team that's probably 10th ranked on reputation. By the way, the same reputation that I think the Huskies deserved. For Michigan to be coming in 4-1 with the roster that they have, and all the guys they lost to the draft also, and to be 4-1 and ranked 10th in the country, bullshit. Absolute bullshit. Okay, so there's a little bit more good news. I do want to talk about, I want to get to this Kalen DeBoer Alabama loss at some point soon. But we do have, we scored one for the good guys this weekend, folks. And Alex and I are both friends of this guy, Kevin Martinez. Most recently, prior to this, the VP of marketing for the Mariners. Is VP of marketing actually the real title? I think so. Vice President of Marketing and Communications. Kevin Martinez got named the President of Business Operations, and nobody deserves that more than Kevin Martinez. Kevin Martinez has been with the Mariners, this says, since 1990. You could say a lot of things. Kevin Martinez is so good, has been so good leading the marketing department that the quality of the Mariners marketing compared to the product they put on the field is a joke. He has done so well. This team has done such a good job marketing itself that it's a joke that they are so good at that and so bad on the field consistently. Does this mean that Kevin Martinez is going to deliver the Mariners a championship as the president of business operations? I mean, he's not involved in the baseball aspects of the team. He's involved in the other parts of the team. But nobody's more deserving. Kevin Martinez is a guy that he's let me interview him twice for different podcasts. Came to a comedy show. Great dude. Nobody deserves it more. Nobody has earned it more. And I mean, friend of the pod. There's a friend of the podcast that is the Mariners' new president of business operations. The amount of things that had to go right and wrong for the Mariners, for this podcast, and for Kevin Martinez coming across the likes of Alex and I at different points in his life for that to be the case, that a friend of the podcast is the new president of business operations for the Mariners, are astounding. Congratulations, Kevin Martinez. I mean, the chances of him coming on a podcast now have to be zero, by the way. But we would love it. We'll come to you. We'll come to you, Kevin Martinez. If you'd have Alex and I interview for you for the podcast, man, actually, maybe we should do that. I don't know. Part of the deal is, what is it going to do? Is it going to move the needle? But and then it's just going to inconvenience a friend of ours and us, by the way. But it would be fun. All right. Well, we'll work on that off the podcast. Kevin Martinez, the new president of football. Jeez, I'm shifting tabs behind the new president of business operations for the Mariners. I almost said baseball operations. Anyway, but okay, we're gonna share. So Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. First time they've lost to Vanderbilt since 1984. There's a bunch of firsts and superlatives. I think that it's the first time Vanderbilt's ever beaten a number one overall team. First, I saw one that was like first time they've ever scored 40 points against the top 5 team. But it resurfaced this clip of Nick Saban, and I don't have a better version of it. We're gonna watch it right here, of Nick Saban. Well, we'll just hear exactly what he says.
I get in. But the only place you play in the SEC that's not hard to play is Vanderbilt. Because when you play at Vanderbilt, you have more fans there than they have. And that's no disrespect to them. It's the truth.
Hey,
when we played in Nashville, we had more fans, Alabama fans, than what they had Vanderbilt fans.
Yeah, Nashville's a great city to go visit, too. You know, it's like the Vegas in the Midwest. So if there's an away game, it's certainly a good place to kind of go take a weekend trip to. We'll go watch Alabama do their thing to a football team. We'll get great seats because there's going to be a lot available. And then we'll do Nashville, too. What a win. I didn't even think about that. Vandy's working against a couple different things there. One of them is interest in their football team. But it's coming back.
Yeah.
It's coming back.
I get in.
So as a comedian, the first person I thought about when I saw, because obviously there's the part of this that's the Kalen DeBoer storyline in Seattle, and I'm happy to talk about that. We'll talk about that. Because there's already pressure, by the way. Like, in the offseason, he was facing pressure before they had played a single game because his recruiting wasn't good enough, and then they almost lose to Georgia, and then they lose to Vanderbilt, and is losing to Vanderbilt going to be such a killer that they can't make the playoff if they win out? Obviously not. I think that Alabama made the playoff last year, having lost to Texas and having a worse record than an undefeated Florida State team. Alabama's gonna make the playoff if they lose 2 games, probably. If they lose 2 games, they probably still make the playoff. And I'm not saying because they deserve it. I'm saying like it's the expanded playoff, and obviously the voters love Alabama. So Alabama's gonna get in. But what a victory. So the first person as a comedian that I thought of was Nate Bargatze, who on the same day hosted SNL and saw his favorite team, and what an obscure favorite team to have, by the way. I've never heard of another Vanderbilt fan, frankly. But for Vanderbilt to beat Alabama the same day as he hosts SNL, it's got to be, outside of like the day he gets married and the day his kid was born, these lies you have to tell the people in your life, this has to be the best day of his life, frankly. Yeah, and then Kalen DeBoer, I'm having a tough time with our pal, past guest, friend of the podcast, Kyle Baldwin, got into a little controversy last week, because he said that he felt kind of like happy for Kalen DeBoer and didn't have animosity towards him. And I got to tell you, I kind of am in the same boat where I'm like, of course, I would rather Kalen DeBoer be here. Of course, I'm mad that Kalen DeBoer isn't coaching the Washington Huskies, because I do think he could have been our Don James. I do think he could have been the guy that kind of returned Washington to perpetual annual prominence, made them a perpetual playoff appearance team. I do think he is the real deal. That's my belief. I think the way he's the real deal, by the way, is as an X's and O's guy and not a recruiter necessarily, And so to me, Alabama is a place that's going to kind of be at odds with what he's really great at, because it's kind of like Chris Peterson, actually. When Chris Peterson came to Washington, he did obviously a tremendous job, but the way I felt at the time was like, this is a guy that's like developing strategies that take advantage of the talent he's able to acquire, and not really a guy that's like piling up 5-star recruits. And in Alabama, you fucking wake up and I could bring 5-star recruits to Alabama. That's not particularly impressive. But if you don't do it, if you're not getting every 5-star recruit, if Alabama isn't the first choice of every top player in, at least I'm sure like in SEC country, every top prospect in SEC country, that's an indictment on the coach. It's a lot of pressure. And I'm not rooting for Alabama, and I'm not rooting for Kalen DeBoer, but I do want good for Kalen DeBoer overall. And while this is fun, it's gratifying. I'm happy that Vanderbilt upset Alabama, because there's an entire biblical story. David versus Goliath. This is the ultimate, this is like nerdy David. If David was a nerd, is Vanderbilt? I always think of Vanderbilt as like the Stanford of the SEC. That might just be because of the relative lack of interest. Because by the way, Nick Saban isn't wrong. It's bulletin board material, but he's not wrong. Obviously, I mean, he knows what fans are in the stands. It also makes me wish that Vanderbilt was in the Big Ten, to be honest with you, because that sounds like a fun trip. I've never been to Nashville, but I have some friends that just moved there for comedy, and I want to get down there. Come on, Vanderbilt, make the move. And okay, so the final thing we'll talk about is that the final thing? Yeah. So the Padres-Dodgers game got delayed by, hold on, let's share this. So
went into the talking with the umpires about somebody in the crowd.
I think you guys can hear this, right?
Remember, Jurickson went into the crowd and robbed a home run earlier, and that's not cool. That is not cool. Ball comes out of the crowd at Profar, and Mike Schild understandably not happy.
So the Padres-Dodgers game got delayed by this. People throwing baseballs back out onto the field. And baseball has a long history of this. People throwing batteries, people throwing... it's also like, what is the distinction between throwing a home run ball back and throwing a ball? I mean, obviously the distinction is you're not throwing a home run ball at the left fielder unless you're an asshole. But I got to tell you, there's part of this that just makes me sad that the Mariners don't get to be a part of it. It's like horrible fan behavior. You're like, oh man, these assholes are only being assholes because their teams are so good. And I guess here's my last question. This is like, obviously the action has subsided here. I think it ended up being like a 10-minute delay, if I recall correctly. But what would you rather have in your favorite team's home stadium? Would you rather have a streaker or someone throw a baseball back? First off, your chances of going viral if you get video. That's a thing. By the way, they stopped showing streakers on TV right, like just barely before we got camera phones, and now you can see not only the streaker and not only what the network is trying to stop you from seeing, but you can see like full dick and balls if you get the right social media video. If you get on, I mean, you got to be on Twitter for that. You can't see that on Instagram, but you could see full dick and balls of a streaker if you want to. A person running around the field also, by the way, is a streaker. That's got to be like a sex crime now, right? Being a streaker at a baseball game. I'm going streaker. That's what I'd say. I would much rather have the chances of physical pain, of physical injury are lower. We all get to see a person in the highest stress moment of their life just walking around their tiny wiener as they run across to get tackled by a guy that doesn't really want to touch that wiener either. I'm voting streaker over this. I also don't really know, like, where do you draw the line between throwing a home run back and throwing a ball in this circumstance. Also, the audacity of these fans to think that they could throw a ball hard enough to have any impact on jerks and Profar. I don't have that self-esteem. All right. Please come see me do comedy. I got some shows coming up. Next Thursday, I will be at the Tracyton. What's it called? The Tracyton Movie House. The Tracyton Movie House, Bremerton, Washington. Great show. I'll be headlining there. I'm going to be at Bickerson's Brew House October 19th. And then November 21st, I am back at Side Hustle Brewing in Kirkland, Washington. We sold out last year. Early bird tickets just became available on Eventbrite. So look up Casey McLean and friends there. I'll be headlining that show also. And then what is the day? I'm going to be at doing a crazy show at the Chalet Theater in Enumclaw. I have another couple shows to announce, but oh my God, what day is it? December? No, it is. Did I not put it on my calendar? I gotta figure it out. I'm gonna be at the Chalet Theater in Enumclaw for what feels like about the 10th time. I've been there a bunch of times, but I'm gonna be there for a crazy show coming up, opening up for a dude that does comedy not very often, but he's like a gamer and sells that place out. So keep your eye out for that. Casey McLean Comedy on Instagram, the Casey McLean everywhere else. Thank you for watching, the some of you that did, and tell a friend. Go on, subscribe on YouTube, please. That's actually the best thing you can do is subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on Spotify or wherever you get podcasts. And I'm trying to do them 4 days a week. So tune in live 2:00 p.m. ish every or 4 days a week. I'm not giving you Friday. That's the stance I'm taking. But otherwise, I'm trying to do 4 days a week. So thank you. Bye. Got to play the music. Getting down there, scrolling down.